Morning, everybody. We're going to call the May 25th meeting of the Airport Authority to order. Everybody hear me okay? John, I heard you earlier. Okay, so everybody please make sure your microphone is muted unless you have a speaking role today. First item today is approve the minutes for the meeting held on May 11th as published.
So moved.
Second.
I got a movement and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And they stand approved as published. Number 2, approve the airport vouchers totaling $31,995.46.
Motion.
Second.
And roll call vote, please.
Engen.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Thank you. Number 3, approve the individual vouchers, Alpha through Echo, I believe, or was there Alpha through Echo, Mead and Hunt, Parsons Electric, and the Greater Fargo Economic Development Corporation.
Motion to approve A through E.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Roll call vote, please.
Engen.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Okay. Number 4, extend the listing agreement with Cityscapes Development for the East Side Terminal Building office space rental.
Okay, this is due on June 1st, and Rick Flaxbarth has been representing us in finding tenants for these terminal buildings for a number of years now, and it's worked out extremely well. We're full. I think we'll continue to be full the way it sounds, so I recommend your approval of his listing agreement for 1 year.
Motion.
Second.
Any other discussion from anybody?
Just a quick question. Is there a reason, do we just typically do it 1 year at a time?
We have been. I guess you could have the option to extend it longer if you would like. We can
No,
make the
I
edit.
just,
Yeah.
I know. I was just curious.
Rick isn't greedy, so.
Okay.
I had a question that said length of lease said to be determined, so I was just
Yep.
wondering how long it was. So a year is fine.
That's for an actual lease agreement.
Actual lease, okay.
Yeah, so for a tenant, it could be a year, 2 year, 3 year.
Okay.
Not the term of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion and second. Roll call vote.
Engen.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Happy to have you another year, Rick. Number 5, receive a request from the Consolidated Communications for the easement to install fiber to the Customs and Border Protection building.
So this fiber installation is in conjunction with a project that we approved for U.S. Customs a number of months ago, whereby we are responsible to provide the technology for the Customs building, and they're upgrading from basically dial-up phone service to fiber, getting in the real age. That equipment was ordered a number of months ago, and Consolidated was selected to put the fiber in. And Dan Bullis, our operations supervisor, met the company up there, and they found a 3-inch conduit that terminates north of the building that was put for this specific purpose. It runs from the building all the way north out into a grass area. They'll dig that out and they'll be able to run the fiber in from a junction box. I guess that's not too far away. So your concurrence of this would be in order, and we already have the draft easement put in place as far as the draft, and then once the installation is done, they'll get the GPS coordinates of the location, and that'll be entered into the legal description, and it will then be recorded.
Okay. I'm good if I'm having dialogue. Motion and second, please.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Engen.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. I will vote for. Okay. Thank you. Number 6, receive request from Midco for an easement to install fiber on the property adjacent to Cass County 31, north of County 20.
So in the northeast corner of Cass 31 and County 20, which is now 40th Avenue North, Midco has a termination point. They're going to be extending from that termination point to the north in the east ditch of County 31, up towards the Stockman addition in that area to serve, and they're requesting an easement for that installation. Once again, we do have some draft documents together for that, and your concurrence of that would be in order.
Okay. Any discussion? Everybody likes
Has
everybody
there
likes
been any
fiber.
conversation with Midco to bring services to the facility here?
That's right.
I don't know, Darren, have they ever expressed interest in putting in service here?
I don't know how close they are to here. I mean, they're like 2 miles away.
Oh, okay.
Maybe at some point they could, but they certainly can if they want to, but I think they probably want a customer first.
Contingent on the
Yeah.
agreement for the.
Yeah, because they're not even on the guard race yet, because we've asked about that.
Oh, okay.
I know, I think CenturyLink or somebody put service into the terminal building, they don't have any customers, so well,
Okay.
maybe they have the gift shop now, but I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars and they don't have a, $40 a month customer yet.
Jeez. So moved.
Rick, do you want any other discussion?
No, I guess my real concern is that this facility should be multi-homed from many different vendors. Gives us an opportunity as we grow if we need to make changes, and knowing where those are, and any and all vendors should have service here, or the ability to have it here. I just think it'd be good to know if they're interested in bringing it here.
Okay. So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All right. Roll call vote.
Engen,
Aye.
Cosgrove,
Aye.
Capitan,
Aye.
Lind,
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Very good. Number 7, receive mechanical change order number 1 from Northern Plains Mechanical to increase of $3,158 for the SRE building. Subject to FAA review.
Yeah, Jeff's got a bunch of change orders for the project before the FAA, and this one here we'll get through. This is kind of self-explanatory. They modified the stormwater pipe routing from underground to be daylighted out the east wall of the building. Work included extra downspouts and core drilling. They also changed the location of a fresh air intake, and that totaled $3,158. So I request your approval of the change order, subject to the FAA review.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Engen,
Aye.
Cosgrove,
Aye.
Capitan,
Aye.
Lind,
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Thank you.
So our reps from Overmiller, I knew this was going to happen. He's en route from dropping off his son or daughter at school, so he's probably going to be here about 8:20. So what we can do is skip to number 9 if you want and come back to this one.
All right, continued discussion on the purchasing policy. Any discussion you would like to start with? Okay, Stacy?
I'll just do a quick update
Yes,
as to what I
please.
did. I had provided the original, my draft, utilizing the City of Fargo's purchasing policy to narrow it to be more associated to the airport. Back in the mid-April meeting, I talked with Rick Friday afternoon about making it a little more rigid. So that's what I did, went through and did some numbering and some different spacing, but the substance of the document has not changed.
Okay,
And I did not attach what John Cosgrove had attached for purposes of those sheets, I guess, to fill out for certain purposes, but, you know, if the board so desires, like, whatever they choose, those can be included.
Mr. Chair, I have a question of
Yes, sir.
Sean. Sean, in the prior years of audits, have there been found any discrepancies or deterioration in your process? Have the auditors called anything out over the last 5 or 10 years?
No.
And that document would be part of the city's document as well, prior?
It is. They request for an update each year if anything's changed with the purchasing policy. And I know, Jonah, you don't recall any questions or anything on anything that we've had. So they've requested a bunch of data right now that she's providing or has provided for the audit just yesterday. So, but no, we've never had any questions.
And those audits are inclusive of government grants, FAA, state agency grants, so their review is very thorough?
Yeah, through the Single Audit Act, we've had years where we've had an FAA grant, but it wasn't selected under the Single Audit Act. But this year, I think we have 3 grants under audit right now.
Okay. And I guess, Mr. Chair, the reason I ask is making substantive changes to a purchasing policy that works. Coming through COVID the way we have, I'm reluctant to make those changes. When something is working, I understand there's documentation and things that can be done incrementally, but I'm really not in favor of making drastic changes to a purchasing policy that is working.
What do you think of this one?
The most recent, well, in speaking with Stacy, I asked her to make it a little more rigid, so
Yeah,
that
I
it's
like that.
defined by bullet points, so
Yep.
a person can reference number or letter if you have to go back to something rather than just a paragraph
Yep.
in a page. And
I thought that was good too. This is real clean. It's very thorough. Again, I thought it was interesting to look at the city of Minot, because this is what I'm seeing when you've got when you've got airport authorities that are in the oversight of the city versus oversight of an airport authority. It's much more extensive and detailed to the extent that some of the information doesn't need to be there. So I like this.
And that's what I did with the city policy,
Yep.
because in reading it just seemed as though there was so much that simply didn't apply to a body of this
Yeah.
size and an administration of this size.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought I would narrow it in scope, so it would be more proper for this authority and this administration.
Okay. What about the worksheets? Yeah, go ahead.
Rick, I appreciate your position there, but it's a little bit relying on the fact that we have not had an audit finding. It is to not upgrade policies doesn't make sense. That's where you get into trouble. So, you need to be contemporaneous and look at things and what's best practices going forward. So, and this isn't done to appease the auditors. This is done to have fair and open competition from the public in a taxpayer-supported entity. And so there's a different way to look at this. And if you look at the 2 policies, the one that I plagiarized from a bunch of different sources, and it's amazing when you see the different policies from different airports, but that what we're dealing with here, and I think it's how you approach the subject. And the default position for purchases by a taxpayer-supported entity is free and open competition with bids. And that's the safe harbor that you see across all of it. That if you ever get in a position, you're questioning what to do, the safe way to approach it is to take bids. Your purchasing policy looks at the times when you wouldn't take bids, and it works at it from that direction. But the enforcement on this, unfortunately, becomes a protest in a bid. You may have an audit finding that this purchase exceeded this and should have had this approval or something like that, which is well and fine. But what you're trying to avoid, and the fact that you haven't had one doesn't mean you won't have one. What you're trying to avoid is a protest and a purchase that gets set aside or not allowed under a grant or a number of different things like that. But if you break these 2 policies down, they're very similar, and it's just how they're presented. So I don't have a problem with the policy Stacy worked on. I do question why the jump in the limits. And again, you may look and say the airport has a large budget, so a $50,000 deal is no big deal to us. Again, it's taxpayer money. And if I'm the business trying to bid and get in on that business, that's a huge contract for me. And so I just think we need to be aware that we are a taxpaying entity. I find it curious when we're looking at policy, we look at small regional airports. When we look at wages, we look at larger, more national airports. And so Minot's got a good policy. You don't win points for having the shortest, most concise policy. What we have to do is set this policy. And Sean, the one thing that would probably help us is in your differentiation, or I'm not, don't want to assign it to you, but in jumping the limits, how many bids are we eliminating? I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't understand what you had said. It's real muffled.
upping the limits in this policy from the previous policy, the amounts, I believe, kind of the thresholds when there's changes. And I'm just trying to determine as we move that amount up, what are we saving? What are we?
What do you save?
I think the limits were changed to reflect kind of to get more in line with the city of Fargo, I believe is the point of going to those limits. Yes? And then that's a little higher.
And they're the same.
And they should be the same, John. So that's why we started this whole thing, because I thought our limits were low in relation to what the city of Fargo was doing. So with their current policy that they have, I asked Stacy to mirror the city of Fargo.
Yeah, then I think we missed there.
I think we what?
Said I think we missed.
I think we missed.
So I'm gonna chime in here. So my assessment was I read your your purchasing policy, and I thought it kind of wiped clean the structure that we had and added some more complexity to it. And what I didn't want to do was make things more difficult and make more red tape to run through for each and everything that we buy. I don't want to limit commerce and overburden our staff to comply with the purchasing policy. All I really wanted to do was raise the limits to mirror what the city of Fargo was. So I really appreciate the hard work you put into that, but at this point I would rather go with Stacy's policy that she had written. I think it's just a little cleaner and kind of did what I was kind of looking for. So, Tammy, you have any discussion you'd like to have?
No, I agree. And I wouldn't be opposed to adding an addendum with some of John's forms.
I agree.
I don't think that's,
My intent was I would wait to figure out where the board would like to go. And if they decide to go with the policy I drafted, we can certainly attach those forms.
Okay. Mr. Capitan, you're the last person to chime in here. Do you have any thing you'd like to add?
Let's see, the only thing that I'd probably add, and not necessarily add, but I agree. I think we should mirror the city of Fargo's policy as closely as possible. I wasn't privy to the whole concept to begin with, why it was needed. But you just stated that it was because you wanted to mirror the city of Fargo's purchasing policy. And if we're doing that, that's fine. I don't think it needs to be, 15, 20 pages long. But
Well, let me clarify and say, just to clarify, I wanted to raise the thresholds for goods and services and numbers spent to match the city, and not necessarily like the entire purchasing policy, because the city of Fargo has many departments and many supervisors, and many more people are there to generate all these requests for proposals and so forth, and they have a very, very large staff, and we don't have those kind of things. So I just said, hey, can we make our numbers, our thresholds mirror the city of Fargo, not necessarily like encompassing their entire policy. So what I think Stacy has put together, I'm pretty happy with. I think that we should also maybe include some of the worksheet documents that Mr. Cosgriff has presented. So that's the direction I would like to see us move at this point. Any further conversation?
Mr. Chair, one thing that John did bring up is I think the decision process, we should have a flow chart of our decision process in place and be following that as well too. In the absence of it, I can understand why he would scrap everything and start anew.
Okay.
And again, that's just sitting down questioning Joan, Sean, any of the staff. Okay, if you're going to purchase something, what do you do? And maybe having that as well, even though it's second nature for them, they've just been doing it regularly so long, it might be a good thing to do and flow chart out what they do, their process, so we do have something written about that. In the absence of it, there would be questions, and I agree with John that maybe in the absence of that, that's why you start from scratch. So I think
Grand
that
Forks
might
had
help.
that, did they not? Yeah, I believe that was one of the things they had, so,
I think Minot did too.
okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Stacy, maybe we've interpreted the city policy differently. But as I looked at the city policy, department heads can do purchases up to 10,000, with their with the department approval. And then you go up a level and purchases up from 10,000 to 25,000, and then that division level is 25 to 50, but anything over 50 has to have authority approval. And this has goods and services going in different areas there.
Okay.
No. Thank you. So I think we have just a little bit more work to do, I would say, before we're ready to vote on anything. So, Stacy, I'd like you to add which worksheets we want to add is my question.
Okay.
So I don't have them in front of me right now, so I can't point and pick and choose which ones I want.
So then just a point of clarification,
Yes,
since you're
please.
still discussing, am I to leave letter B at page 3 between 50 and 150 at this point, and then the board votes?
Let it be formal and informal proposals may be solicited by the MMA for approval. I'm good with it. Anyone else?
I think
Yes.
On the item B on that goods and services of anything 50,000 or up to less than 150, it already states that it has to have airport authority approval.
Yes.
That's where I was confused as to what Mr. Cosgriff was saying, that I thought he said that anything over 50 did not have airport authority approval, but according to what
It's where the executive director has approval. So, well, and again, I'm going to concede defeat here. I will not support a motion to approve this. But when you have statements like formal or informal proposals, bids will be solicited and presented for approval with no guidance on when you use formal or informal, makes no sense.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
I think the catch-all is they'll follow the FAA rules and guidelines in each one of them, and that's kind of where we bounce back to. Is it within the confines of the FAA rules and guidelines? So it is somewhat of a catch-all. I wouldn't, I wouldn't use it as this is how we act every time, but it is that catch-all or safety net on the back end of it.
And I guess.
Missing here is what's the procedure in sole source and piggybacking.
So I guess I relate all that back to the definitional sections. Now maybe those could be expanded upon to more specifically define a formal process versus informal process, sole source procurement. Again, I did work off what the city utilizes. So I guess I relate things back to the definitional section.
Well, and Stacy, the only thing I would argue with you there is in your definition of sole source procurement, and again, in a policy, I think it's dangerous to give examples. The examples are repairs or modification to security system, access controls, HVAC. When you do that, and then you do a sole source procurement outside of your examples, you've set yourself up for an argument.
I don't have a problem removing it. I mean, we did that with some snow removal equipment, if I remember, out of Sioux Falls. Or no, that was a piggyback, sorry.
We've done piggyback, yeah. It's all a matter of, in your mind, how you think it's logically laid out, and I have no problem with this format, but what one thinks it should be, another doesn't.
Could you give us a breakout of, are we overwhelming your staff with purchase policy and bids?
No, it works fine. How we're doing it now, everything has worked fine.
What are we talking about here? Are we talking about 1,000 transactions? Or are we talking about 20 transactions?
It depends on the year. I mean, it could be a couple dozen a year or less when you get into this range here. It might even be less than 10 in some years. It really varies on what the need may be. If the chiller goes down, you're pretty much sole source there because you have to get the parts that, from the chiller manufacturer, but we've had that happen. The HVAC system is pretty well set on a certain type of component. Airfield generators, I mean, sometimes you're locked into one vendor for things just because if it's a CAT engine or a Cummins or whatever it might be. But it can really vary, but it's not excessive in terms of those procurements in those price ranges.
You're talking about the sole source
Or for anything.
or anything.
Yeah,
I mean, total number.
Yeah, total number
Yeah,
of bids in a year. Yeah, regardless of the type of bid. Are we doing 100 bids a year? Or are we doing 10,000 bids a year?
No. On the federal side, we may do one bid a year on the federal side. It depends on, what grant that we have that's out there. For things out on the airfield, like for airfield markings, if we want a company to come in like we did last year, the company from New York, and upgrade all of our airfield markings, we'll put a formal notice in the paper. Jeff will post it on the exchange, and anybody in the country can bid on it. The street lighting ones. So I mean, I would say a dozen formal bids a year is very excessive.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just say that, again, safe harbor and best practices for taxpayer-supported entities is to have free and open competition and bids for goods and services. And the more open and the more the sunshine in on those activities, the better it is. And so
A lot of our janitorial supplies are based on a state contract. They come out of the state.
And Sean, that's what the policy tries to address. For routine purchases, that you don't start, overburdening your system. And so, if you follow policy and do different things, on routine purchases, what you can do is rotate vendors. But again, plan it firmly in everyone's mind that this is a taxpayer-supported entity, and everybody should have free and open competition to it. I beat this for as long as I care to, but
And John, I think also you.
Excuse me, please let me finish. Having the shortest, most concise policy is not the proper way to operate.
Number one, it's not the shortest, and it is concise though, and it's necessary information in there. And John, I just think that you keep bringing up some things that I think personally you are subtly pointing a finger to that there has been problems, and there hasn't been problems. One of the things that Sean just stated, they had a company out of New York bid. Now that is totally free and open competition. So I think we should be a little bit, and you keep bringing back, if you follow the policy. They follow the policy, John. So I don't think you have to keep bringing that up, because that's just, it makes it sound like our staff isn't doing that, and they have been doing that. So, I mean, I'm just bringing that up to you because I just think it's, if you look at your employees there and you say something like that to them, or someone says that to you, wouldn't you just start questioning, well, I mean, we have been doing it right. So I'm just saying that we need to be probably a little bit more conscious of the people that have been here and are here and that have been doing open purchasing, very in depth, and they've been following the rules. So I just wanted to bring that up to you because I was kind of offended.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm sorry if I've offended you, but our job is to set policy. And this doesn't cast aspersions on anything that's been done previously. It's simply to look at policy and what's the best way through this. If that offends you, I'm sorry, but
John, it doesn't offend me. No, we are setting policy. We have set policy since day one. You have come on board, and I appreciate your great in-depth background, but it's how you approach it that I'm just saying that we are here setting policy. That's what we have done since I've been on, setting policy. And all of us have to work together as a group. And I'm just saying that if you could be a little bit more use better word choice, so these are our employees. They have been doing this. Our job is to set policy, and if there is a problem, yes, we need to address that. So you didn't offend me. You offended, I believe you could have offended me because I felt the staff, they work their butts off. I don't know if you've ever spent a day with them, but if you haven't, you really need to. So you will see what really goes on here.
Okay, well, writing clear policy so staff can read it and follow it correctly, I don't think is in any way demeaning the employees. I've never once brought up a situation of saying this was done incorrectly or this is has to be done in a different manner. What I'm saying is we need to be clear and concise, and that the employees should be able to understand the policy, read it, and make decisions. I think this is kind of a pointless discussion at this point because it's, I know somebody who said this or felt this way or different things like that, and it's just not, getting us anywhere.
All right, thank you, John. I'm going to move over to Rick.
Mr. Chair, in the spirit of time, I'd ask that we take one more review of this document, refine it with any flow charting or process control that Sean and Joan and their employees have for clarity for Mr. Cosgrove, and add the forms necessary to be in file to document and revisit this next meeting.
Yes, I agree. Well said, thank you. So, do you have any questions, Stacy?
I do not at this point.
And then Sean and Joan, I would like you to weigh in and adapt the purchasing policy that you currently use, and so that you can kind of help steer us the way that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have one question here is on this purchasing policy. Is this different than is this policy that we were mailed out to that we're discussing? Is this different from what we've been doing prior years? I guess that question is really addressed to Sean. Is it any different? Is it?
The only thing different, this one is, the only thing different is the limits have changed. So it's really not different than what we've been doing before, other than the limits have been changed. And then there's definitions that have been provided, which is in addition to the policy that we have been working with since 2010. So basically, Jim, the limits have changed.
And we're concise.
Okay. I'm going to
Obernell is on now.
go back to number
It's on.
8.
So Steve from Obernell is on. Steve, can you hear us?
Steve from Overnell. So we're going to move
Yep,
to
I
the
can hear.
discussion about Overnell Engineering regarding the passenger terminal HVAC study.
Yeah, so,
So,
yeah, good morning. As
go
I
ahead.
said, my name is Steve Hipfner. I'm with Obernell Engineering, mechanical engineer. So I walked through, the hangar space, the terminal office spaces here. A couple of weeks ago, put together a study and kind of summarize the existing HVAC system, which, by and large, aside from I think there's one older heat pump and one energy recovery unit that's on the roof that's been there for a long time. The actual HVAC system as a whole is in, great shape. It's relatively new, installed in 2007. I think there's some of the project that was completed in '08 as well before it was fully completed. But overall, the system is in, very good operating condition. And then we specifically focused on a few airborne pathogen mitigation studies. And a lot of this was based on some recommendations from ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, to try and, what are the best methods for controlling airborne pathogens. And a couple items that they really stress is, making sure we're getting the appropriate ventilation air to the occupied space, or the breathing zone where, most people are pulling in the respiration air, and then making sure that's effectively delivered to that space. Increasing filtration efficiency to the highest level the system can be capable of, in some areas trying to increase air change rates, so you get or you replace the air faster going through the air filters and your equipment, and then trying to maintain a specific relative humidity range, and the optimal range is 40 to 60%. And then kind of a last resort and last option is to put in some system that can help kill or make an airborne pathogen ineffective. So kind of tried to go over those 5 items that they explored, and kind of did a little more of a deep dive into each option in this study report. So the first one I looked at was increasing the amount of ventilation air, or the ventilation air effectiveness. Based on what I saw going through it, there's no reason to increase the amount of outside air being brought into the building. Everything appears to be designed to meet the ASHRAE 62.1 requirements, which is the ventilation requirements for commercial spaces. And they haven't cited any reason to go above that. That is proven to be an effective level. So that is appears where the current facility is designed to. So don't really see any need to make any changes there. The one thing I did notice, and this goes kind of back to when the system was originally installed in the mid 80s, is the outside air is not ducted directly to any of the horizontal heat pumps. So those heat pumps are what are vastly serving, mainly the office areas, and then there are a couple located above the original baggage claim area, before that expansion in '07. And then up in the restaurant area, those have some horizontal heat pumps. So the outside air is not ducted directly into those. It's provided into the plenum space only where that unit is pulling return air. So for some areas, that's effective and it would work. And in other areas, it's providing that air into a common plenum space with multiple other heat pumps. So there's no way to determine, or at least not easily determine without, doing an entrainment study to determine that you're getting the amount of ventilation that should be to certain areas. So that's one recommendation is, modifying some of that ductwork to get that air to make sure it's going into those heat pumps and deliver to that occupied zone appropriately. So, at the end of this document, I did summarize, opinion of probable cost to do that. And also within this discussed, there's that old energy recovery unit that's on the roof kind of above the restaurant over on the east side. Really that unit has outlived its life expectancy and really should be looking at being replaced. That unit is providing the ventilation air for, the restaurant dining areas that are upstairs. And then it's also, providing some ventilation air to keep the compressors cool, for the kitchen refrigerator and freezer. So I would recommend replacing that. I know in talking with Dan, there are certain times of the year that unit gets shut off, when when they start having a humidity issue in the building. Mainly in the summertime, that unit has no cooling capability, so it can't pull any moisture out. So that's just adding moisture to the building that starts creating issues with heat pumps freezing up and not operating. And then also when it gets really cold, there's no heat in the unit, it's just using energy recovery. So it gets shut off when it gets too cold outside so that it don't freeze water lines and sprinkler lines in the ceiling. So that's one unit I would recommend replacing. It'd be another energy recovery unit, but with cooling and heating in it. So you'd have the ability to dehumidify the air and keep that unit operating to continually provide that ventilation air to the space. Any questions on that option one about ventilation or ventilation effectiveness?
No, continue.
Okay. Next one is increased filter efficiency. So a vast majority of the heat pumps, or at least all the horizontal heat pumps and all but 2 of the vertical heat pumps have, I'd say, essentially the minimum MERV rated filters for commercial buildings currently installed, which is a MERV 8 filter in them currently. So ideally, we try and get a higher efficiency filter within those heat pumps. All the horizontal units, the highest filter efficiency we'd be able to find to install in those and not have a really significant impact on airflow would be a MERV 11 filter. So we're going like a MERV 8 is considered a 30% filter, 30% efficient. A MERV 11, you start getting into the 80 to 85% efficient. The vertical heat pumps, which are the larger units that are serving, a vast majority of the more high traffic, high occupancy density spaces, think of, the terminal areas as people are waiting to board their aircraft. And then the main entrance areas, those are served by vertical units. Those units, we can install MERV 13 filters in them for an even more higher efficient filtration at those units. I went through, the original shop drawings, and the horizontal units have variable speed fans. We have a balancer come in and adjust the airflow to get those back to what it was originally designed for, as a higher efficiency filter, as a little more pressure drop. And then the vertical heat pumps, when I looked at them, a vast majority of them, we could increase the fan speed by, adjusting, some shiv dimensions or pulley dimensions to get those, at the designed airflow. There may be, just a couple of those units that will see a slight decrease in their fan performance, which would result in a very small decrease in cooling capacity. We're in the 2 to 3%. So nothing that would be concerning. But that's what I would recommend from a filter efficiency. Moving on to increased air change rate, a vast majority of the space, you see what would be viewed as a sufficient air change rate and what ASHRAE would recommend for airborne pathogen control. You know, the only exception to that is right when you come to the top of the stair, the escalators, between that and the security checkpoint, that area currently with how the HVAC system is designed doesn't have any supply air being provided in there. So you're just relying on, you know, natural air currents to move air around in that higher volume space. Once you get into what I'll call the security tunnel itself, there is some air there, but not when you're out past the elevator. And I know that area at certain times of the day, you know, especially early in the morning, can have a, you know, a higher occupancy load as people are waiting to get into the security. I know sometimes it gets long out there. So it's where this option 3 is recommending an increased air change rate. So as a response to this current pandemic, you know, that hopefully we're towards the tail end of, there's some manufacturers that have, you know, started to develop and have manufactured air purification devices for being placed in spaces without needing significant changes to the HVAC system. So Price created what's called their overhead air purifier, and I'm sure there's other manufacturers as well. And these are really designed to be hung in a space, you know, limited amount of ductwork off of them, and they provide HEPA filtration in an area. So if we in my study, I list providing approximately 6, and that would provide the recommended air change rate in that area of what ASHRAE would recommend of 4 to 6 air changes per hour. Option 4 here, humidification. So like I mentioned earlier, ASHRAE does recommend maintaining relative humidity between 40 and 60%. In our climate, 40% is extremely challenging to meet year round, and in a lot of buildings it becomes impossible just of trying not to make sure you get condensation on exterior surface of the building, you know, especially windows and window frames. You know, so as a result, when it's, you know, 15 below zero or colder in our climate, you know, most buildings can only sustain 20, maybe 25% relative humidity. We can't maintain that minimum of 40% that ASHRAE would recommend. Then usually when we put in a humidification system, it's into a duct system. It's distributed through the area or through the building. In this building with a lot of heat pumps, there's 46 total. It's really challenging to introduce humidification into all those heat pumps. You know, we couldn't look at putting it in the outdoor air units that are providing the ventilation air, you know, and that'll get some moisture in, but we're not going to get anywhere close to the 40% recommended level. So, you know, at this point, just in operational, you know, maintaining those pieces of equipment, getting them all installed, and knowing that we are not capable of getting to the ideal humidification level, I don't recommend doing that at this time, but I did include opinion of probable cost to install a humidifier for one vertical heat pump, or same for one of the outside air units. So I think I said in here, if you're going to do the whole building, you'd end up with 15 of these, but so a kind of a per cost or per unit cost is included at the end. Option 5, the last option, is kind of a germicidal irradiation system. There's 2 types that have, in some of these that have been around for a while, especially UVGI, which is ultraviolet germicidal radiation. It's been used for many, many years. Bipolar ionization is a little bit more of a newer technology. Ultraviolet germicidal irradiation is installing a UV light in the airstream. Typically, they're installed at the cooling coil because there's some advantages of eliminating and removal any bacteria and mold growth on a cooling coil. Is really where a vast majority of people have used these. However, there's some limited advantage of putting those in the airstream, as it can help kill some of those airborne pathogens. And all that is based on the intensity of the light and the duration of time. And usually the air is moving so fast that it's not extremely effective at, kind of on the fly sanitation, just because the exposure time the virus has to the UV light is not long enough. So, and in a horizontal heat pump, it's really not an option to install it. So I don't perceive that to be much of an option for this facility. The other option would be bipolar ionization, which creates ions in the airstream. Those ions now are trying to get back to the correct particle charge. And so they tend to attract to dust, virus, bacteria, your VOCs that are in the air, which normally given off in new construction. Think of the new house smell is usually caused by VOCs. So those ions attract to those particles, surround them, make them ineffective, but then it makes them larger so they can be captured by filters. Some of them drop out of the air into surfaces, but then they also work, they're trying to rip the hydrogen atoms from the viruses and the bacteria, and that essentially kills those virus or bacteria. So there are some studies that show that they are effective. The one caveat with this is ASHRAE has not fully endorsed the technology yet. It's relatively new. They feel like they haven't been able to do enough study yet on it. So they haven't fully endorsed. They do say it's an option to be considered, but it's not 100% stamped, is absolutely recommended. This makes a extremely large difference in a building. If the airport decides they want to do something like this, we certainly can help spec a product. Part of the reason ASHRAE hasn't been very interested in fully endorsing it is there are some manufacturers' products that, as part of creating these ions, ozone is created, and that's not desirable to be, in an occupied space. So I know of at least one manufacturer. There may be others that are UL listed that do not generate ozone, but just need to make sure that, if you go this route, that you spec, that the correct bipolar ionization technology is spec'd to meet that requirement. And these are very small devices. They can be installed in one heat pump or all of them. They'll fit in all of them. They're a really small technology that is very easy to get power to as well. So kind of a summation of the 5 options. I list in an opinion of probable cost. Option 1 I split into 2 between the ductwork revisions and balancing and replacing the energy recovery unit, and then air filter efficiencies, recirculating HEPA for that second floor area for increasing that air change rate, the humidification and bipolar ionization install, all kind of summarized in that report. So guys have any questions, you can by all means ask them now. I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, Sean and I have communicated some, so direct anything you have as well to Sean, and we'll be, glad to answer any questions or provide any additional assistance that's needed.
Okay, Tammy, go ahead.
On option 5, you said they can be attached to all the units. When you gave the $120,000 estimate, how many units would they be attached to?
That is for installing bipolar ionization devices in all 46 heat pumps.
Okay. Thank you. Question for Sean is, because that is not will all this be, could we apply for CARES Act money for this?
There is a grant, the Carissa grant that we just received, Grant 53, is for this purpose. However, we would need Steve's assistance to identify if there are eligible vendors that meet the Buy America clause. Yeah. And I think what a lot of airports are finding is the feds send out all this money saying, do this stuff and do pathogen mitigation, but they don't find a lot of US-made products to do the work. Yeah. So Steve, I don't know if you're aware of everything that you've recommended here. Is it all going to be able to beat the Buy American clause?
So yeah, so option 1, for sure, that's kind of ductwork that's manufactured, probably locally, assuming a local contractor gets it. They just need to make sure they, buy their steel stock for making ductwork. in America, so that typically is not an issue. The energy recovery unit, there's a lot of manufacturers that manufacture in the United States. Some also have some out-of-state manufacturing, say Canada. I know one manufacturer has a plant or two in Mexico. If they need to meet the Buy American Act, though, they specifically, assemble and make sure they meet that requirement within a factory here in the United States. The filters are, not an issue. HEPA filtration units, that one may be challenging. I'd have to see who else is available that makes a unit for that option 3. The one I referenced is manufactured by Price Industries, which is located in Winnipeg, actually. So I can check to see if they have a plant in the United States that would meet that Buy American Act. If not, I can see what other options are available for a Buy American product for that. If you decide to go with humidification, I don't foresee that being an issue. There's multiple humidifier manufacturers that are, American manufacturers that have the product. And I can double check on the bipolar ionization. I know it's an American company, but I can't speak for as far as where they manufacture their product. So
the total that you have here, go ahead, Steve.
No, I'll follow up and, with items I'm not sure on, Sean, and I'll let you know what I find out.
Okay, so the total that you have here estimated is 540,000. If we choose not to do the humidification, we're still at $500,000 in terms of your recommendations. And I don't know, Dan, have you had a chance to look at this? And any questions, concerns, or?
Well, one of my questions is, you have humidification on here, and we have more issues with humidity in the summer, and there's nothing in this that addresses the humidity problem that we have in the summer.
Okay, did you hear that, Steve?
Sure. Yeah, so Dan, I think some of that, I think if you, in option 1B for replace that rooftop energy recovery unit, we can select that unit so you have mechanical cooling to help get that moisture out of the air before it comes into the building. That'll help significantly. Then the other thing, Dan, that we can look at, working with you is seeing if we can, potentially lower the chilled water temperature a little bit and still maintain capacity for the 2 other makeup air units that provide that outside air. If it's still an issue after replace the energy recovery unit, I'm guessing that's where, a vast majority of your issue is coming in from that energy recovery unit. But we can look at altering the control sequence some on the makeup air units as well to help further dry out that outside air before it comes into the building to help with that issue as well.
Okay. So would the board like Obernell to proceed with preparing formal plans and specs to put this out for bid?
Would it
so desire to do
would
that.
it be separate bids? I would assume option 1A, B, so they're separate bids or separate RFPs?
I guess that's a matter of how you put the bid sheet together for each option, Steve. If you have formal bids and we open bids, all the options would have separate bid items, bid lines.
And I'd just say for option 4, that is per heat pump too. So, and right now I don't know, I wouldn't directly recommend option 4, but 1A, 1B, 2, 3, and 5, yeah, we certainly can put together construction documents. And you can have them split out as, say, here's the base bid is whatever we know we for sure want to take care of. Let's say we for sure want to do option 1B because it replaces a piece of equipment that needs to be replaced, but it increases your reliability of your ventilation system, which has direct impact on pathogen control. I would recommend that as for sure being your base bid, as if you have grant money you can use for it, let's get that piece of equipment replaced as part of this. The rest of it we can put in as an add alternate, or give us a separated price for each one of these options. And then the board can pick from there. Do they want to do just the base bid, or do they want to do all of the options listed in there?
And part of the reason why I was interested, and I'm sad John has dropped off, is because it would impact our purchasing policy.
Well, if we do formal bids, I mean.
Formal
then-
bids, yeah.
Then we're fine. So what
Okay.
I would do is I'd recommend that you would have Obernoll prepare formal plans and specifications to the point of opening bids for all options presented except option 4. And you could bring a contract, you can prepare a contract for those services, Steve, and we can approve that at our June 8th meeting if you want to do so. What your fee is going to be to do the plans and specs.
Do the design?
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, we'll make sure we get something to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add to it and include minimal impact operations of the facility so that there's no minimal downtime or overlap if possible.
Okay, yeah, working on the security tunnel is not an option, 6 a.m. to 10 or 8 p.m.
And the reason that we selected Obernoll is because they're the mechanical engineer of record for the terminal buildings. So if we go out and find someone else, we're going to spend an enormous amount of money for them to be familiar. They've got all the plans, all the specs, they're familiar with it. So that's why Obernoll has been selected.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve Obernoll to put together the plans and specs, please?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
I'll second.
seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Engen.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Cosgriff, are you on?
He left.
You did? Lynn?
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Go ahead, Steve, put that together for us and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Last item is the airport construction security update.
We're going to have a comprehensive review of security sometime in early June here, Darren. I don't know, is it the week of June 7th that they're here? First week of June with some follow-up. So TSA will be doing our annual inspection. Jeff, on the cargo apron?
I'll keep this real quick. Really, all that Northern has been working on is bituminous paving on the apron. They have to put down 6 inches of bituminous before they do the concrete paving. There's 12 acres of it, so it's taking some time. They were running into issues getting compaction for the last 2-3 days, so they have to get it to a certain percent compaction to get it to pass test, so it meets the FAA requirements. They've been tweaking their mix designs and their construction processes, and now they seem to have that figured out, so it's in really good shape.
Okay.
That's it.
And let's see, Terry's gone this week, so we won't have any update on the SRE building, but they are making some progress. I mean, you've been over there, and the existing building, they're making some good progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 99% done.
Yeah.
Punch item.
And like I say, at the next meeting or whenever the Jeff and the FAA get together, we'll have a number of change orders coming, so that will be there. Just some housekeeping items. I'd like you to pass a resolution of sympathy for the family of Barry Wrightan, our retired firefighter that had passed away.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Motion passes.
June 9th is our triennial exercise, and at our next board meeting, I'll have Chief Bush kind of give us a little rundown of how that's all going to work. Rapid testing provided by the state through the Army National Guard ends here May 30th. They will complete their mission. That will be done. June 7th through the 11th, TSA pre-check will take place up here in either the boardroom or the West Wing. So Darlene Josie, our high flyer, is helping with that again.
Can we put that on the website, make sure it's, or can we get Flint
It's-
Communications to push that out, please?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
They've been doing that. The parking equipment bid, that was extended for another week. They did receive some information, but they've decided to extend it a week to give some people some more time. North Dakota Public Health Insurance Trust and Hayes Companies, we've had a number of conversations with John Hayes. Their Blue Cross Blue Shield reps finally got in touch with the City of Fargo's Blue Cross Shield reps. They're on the same page now. HR wasn't able to provide the letter that we needed because of some confusion with releasing data for groups of less than 51 people, but the state legislature changed that this year to allow for any organization that's looking to go to the Public Health Insurance Trust to capture their data for the employees. So I'm hoping that this week that letter will go out and then Hayes Companies can begin the process to review our employees' information. We received a special assessment notice from the city for 40th Avenue North, County 20. They're going to do a street lighting project. Our estimated share net is $280,769.65. The National Guard property would be assessed $16,980.79 based on their estimates. So that's for street lighting from about I-29 to, I believe, University Drive. They're going to put lighting in there. To the river? Okay.
I also got assessed for that. Mine was significantly less.
I don't know who found this yesterday. Darren was driving around, but on County 31, we have some property where it was rerouted north of the airport to County 31 on the west side of the Stockman addition, and they noticed this huge garden between the road and the backyards. So I sent off some information to Jason Benson, the county engineer at Cass County, and did some research, and yeah, we've got a gentleman that's established a huge garden and two big piles of wood on our property, so I'm going to drive up there and speak with the gentleman today to, I guess, tell him to move it. But he's got his garden in, it's huge. They found that yesterday, so we'll have that conversation and see where that goes. So that's all I have.
Okay. Any other items? Yeah, anybody would like to talk about? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.